this meeting. Hi, Howard and Peggy. So, Chair Gonzalez, you're good to kick us off.
All right, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I know it's not easy and it's the end of the week and folks are feeling the holiday break and spirit coming on. But thank you everybody for this opportunity. My name's Ana Gonzalez and I am the chair of this subcommittee and I welcome you all. So we're going to start with a roll call. So Justin Hall, take us away.
All right, good morning, everybody. Carrie Akimi Hernandez, Lisa Marie Alvarado, Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Oh, Lisa, your audio is not coming through.
Okay.
I'll come back. David Acevedo, Gloria Huerta, Peggy Martinez,
Present.
Andres Ramirez, Michelle Rousey,
Present.
Randy Torres Van Vleck, Howard Wong,
Here.
Chair Ana Gonzalez,
Present.
Martha Armis Kelly, all right. I'll come back to Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Present. Thank you, Justin.
All right.
Yay, we can hear.
If it's okay, I'm gonna stay off video. I try every time and it helps preserve the strength if that's okay. Thanks, team.
I believe we need one more for quorum today.
That's correct. We need 6 people. I miscounted. Chair Gonzalez, it's up to you if you want to take us through the land acknowledgement and maybe by uh,
Yeah, well, I don't
minutes
see
we'll have.
any action items, so I think we should be okay to proceed. Okay, so again, welcome everyone. At this time, we're gonna do the land acknowledgement and acknowledge the land we sit in. I am in occupied Tongva Yuhaviatam land in the Inland Empire. And we're going to get started with this. So, we acknowledge that the land that we now call California is the ancestral lands of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with Indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. At this time, I'll open it up if any other members want to acknowledge the land they're in right now. Okay, see none. Clerk, is there anyone wishing to speak for public comment on this item?
Chair, I don't see anybody requesting to comment on the item at this time.
Thank you. I actually just did notice an action item or minutes. So I believe we're able to skip them and move on to the next item, and we'll come back to it when we have quorum. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. So at this time, we're going to introduce agenda item 5 on vehicle weight safety study. And we have a presenter, Kyla, I hope I said that right. Kyla McDonald, Associate Deputy Director of Legislation and Finance for CTC. So welcome, Kyla.
Thank you very much. And as Justin is pulling up my slides, I just want to really thank you and appreciate convening this meeting today. And we're looking forward to hearing your feedback. And we have some questions throughout the course of the presentation for your feedback. So just thank you very much for doing this before the holidays are coming up. Looking forward to hearing what you all have to say.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, it's Peggy. Can I say something real quick?
Yes, Peggy, you have the
Okay,
floor.
very quickly. I just want to let you all know that I have to leave a little bit early. We don't know how long the meeting will run, but I have to bow out at around 2:15. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Peggy. It's been noted. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And as you noted, I am pleased to present to you today tab 5, which is an informational item, the summary of vehicle weight safety study task force findings, which is Assembly Bill 251. These findings are the final product of a series of 5 Bagley-King compliant public meetings of the Vehicle Weight Safety Study Task Force, the last meeting of which was held on November 13th of this year. Next slide, please. Today we'll discuss the background of the study, the summary of task force findings, and also ask you questions to solicit feedback on the findings to help commission staff prepare our draft report to the legislature. Next slide, please. In 2022, the Commission recommended the legislature authorize a study on implementation of a weight-based passenger vehicle fee to account for the impacts of larger vehicles on vulnerable road users, such as bicyclists and pedestrians, and the increased injury and fatality rates that have been seen. Following the Commission's recommendation, the legislature passed AB 251 in 2023, which required the Commission to convene a task force to study the relationship between vehicle weight, vulnerable road user injury, fatalities, and degradations to road infrastructure, potential costs and benefits of a passenger vehicle weight fee to offset these unreasonable impacts, and equity considerations to account for different populations, demographic groups, incomes, and professions statewide. The Commission must submit a report to the legislature detailing the findings of the study, including any legislative recommendations. The Commission is seeking the EAC's feedback on the task force findings to inform its report to the legislature, and we also welcome written feedback. I also did want to note that in the last week, we have shared that final document of task force findings with you all. And it was also this was something that was presented to the Commission last week as well. The task force findings are also available on our Commission website at the link shown here, just for your reference. Next slide, please. This outlines the process to develop our report to the legislature. The very first step of which was to convene the task force and produce a summary of findings as required by AB 251. As you know, that process is wrapped up. We're moving on to the next step, as you can see here, and taking those findings to, of course, the Commission and to you all today for your feedback. And in order for the task force in order to inform the task force conversations, Commission staff contracted with a team of researchers led by the University of California, Berkeley, to study the requirements of the legislation. That information and those results were taken and presented to the task force during the task force meetings. Feedback that we heard from the task force was used to develop the key takeaways and additional feedback from task force members. And as I mentioned, that brings us to the EAC involvement today. We want to hear your feedback on the task force findings, and we're going to present a summary of those findings to you today. We have added discussion questions, as I mentioned before, to the presentation to help solicit your feedback. And note, we are going to engage you again as we develop the draft report to the legislature early in 2026. Immediately following this meeting, we're going to be using your feedback along with UC Berkeley's research and the the final task force findings and feedback that we heard from the commission as well to develop our draft report to the legislature. Next slide, please. Regarding the study timeline, as I mentioned, the task force meetings concluded in November of this year. They ran from June to November. At the conclusion of this meeting today, we are going to start developing the report to the legislature using the feedback that we heard, like I mentioned, from last week, from today, from UC Berkeley's academic report, and also the final summary of task force findings. In 2026, we expect to release the draft report to the legislature and gather additional feedback during a public workshop. The final report will be presented to the commission for adoption and submission to the legislature thereafter. Next slide. Over the next 2 slides, I'm going to present a little bit more information about the task force. So AB 251 specifies that the task force shall consist of state agencies, including the Office of Traffic Safety and the Department of Motor Vehicles. Also, it should include local transportation agencies, safety advocates, and representatives from the automobile industry. Guided by the legislation, task force membership include representative from the organizations listed here. One of the task force members I want to point out, Streets for All, was the bill sponsor. This list was approved by the commission in December 2024. Next slide. As I previously mentioned, we held 5 task force meetings from June through November of this year, in which legislatively mandated topics were discussed throughout the course of the task force process. Staff provided background information, timeline, milestones, and task force meeting dates and outcomes at the onset of the task force process to ground members and the public in the process and outcomes of their input. Generally, each task force meeting included a presentation of the UC Berkeley academic research regarding the legislatively mandated topics. These academic presentations helped establish a common understanding of the research prior to presenting key takeaways and discussion questions. Afterwards, we had a task force roundtable discussion where research key takeaways were presented for feedback and additional questions targeting at identifying feedback on the legislative requirements. And lastly, we held public comment on each item. A summary of each meeting was presented at each subsequent meeting and rolled up into the summary of task force findings that are being presented today. The task force process also aimed to summarize the breadth of task force perspectives rather than build consensus. Next slide. In the following slides, we're going to present our task force findings to seek your additional input to help develop our report to the legislature. But before proceeding any further, we just wanted to ask if you had any questions regarding the legislative requirements, the task force process, or anything that was presented so far. No questions? Okay. All right. Next slide. So our remaining slides do identify key takeaways from the University of California, Berkeley's research and feedback from the task force members and the public regarding the topics that you see on the slide. As previously mentioned, the task force process was not intended to establish a consensus on these topics, Instead, the task force members offered many areas where potential policy recommendations could be considered. As commission staff begin to develop the draft report to the legislature, we'll be relying on these task force findings, the academic research, and your feedback today. Before we dive into these findings, we do also want to provide a couple additional slides to lay a foundation for what we'll present today. Next slide. Here are the typical passenger vehicle classes that are considered the study, including, I should mention, not only internal combustion engine, which are, your typical gas engines, but that also includes battery electric and hybrid electric vehicles, which are heavier in weight across all vehicle classes, makes, and models. Next slide. As we present these findings to you, we just wanted to show you the questions that we want to ask at the end of the presentation, just so you can start thinking about what we want to ask and keep these things in mind as you look at the following slides. So, of course, what questions do you have on the task force findings presented today? And based on the findings presented, what should the commission staff consider in its report to the legislature? Next slide. So regarding California vehicle fleet trends, since the 1980s, passenger vehicle weight continues to increase across all vehicle classes and fuel types. SUVs are expected to overtake sedans as the most registered vehicle in California, and that includes urban, rural, and suburban areas. And people are holding on to their vehicles longer, which can delay the adoption of newer vehicles with improved safety features or advanced driver assistance systems. Next slide. Regarding California injury and fatality trends, sedans cause the majority of pedestrian, bicyclist fatalities and serious injuries in urban and rural areas. Sedans are also the most registered vehicle type in California. SUVs are the fastest growing vehicle type involved in crashes with vulnerable road users. Despite evidence of increasing fatalities and serious injuries for vulnerable road users, a causal relationship between vehicle weight and fatality and serious injury trends could not be identified. This is due to the difficulty in isolating vehicle weight, or really any singular variable in a crash, as a primary factor. Next slide. Vehicle collision trends since 2010 are also shown on this table, which include 71% increase in pedestrian fatalities, 44% pedestrian serious injury increase, 20% increase in bicyclist serious injuries, with bicyclist fatalities remaining constant. Children pedestrians are 82% more likely to be killed if struck by an SUV versus a sedan. And when adjusting for population, pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries in disadvantaged areas are approximately 50% higher for all vehicle types. Next slide. And lastly, regarding California injury and fatality trends, task force members questioned the degree to which other factors may or may not influence collision trends presented, such as road user behaviors, that includes both people who walk, bike, and drive, distractions, licensing standards, vehicle age, rideshare services, and autonomous vehicles. Next slide. Regarding potential regulatory responses, historically, passenger vehicle safety is focused on vehicle occupants and not those outside of a vehicle. Countries similar to the US require vehicle testing for pedestrian collision outcomes. And task force members discuss other aspects of the safe system approach, such as improving infrastructure, driver's licensing standards and education, traffic safety laws, enforcement, that also might reduce fatality and serious injuries of vulnerable road users. Next slide. Regarding potential built environment responses, risk and severity of crashes involving vulnerable road users could be reduced by emphasizing the safe system approach, effective roadway design, and investment in infrastructure. Barriers to infrastructure improvements for vulnerable road users include limited funding, implementing projects at scale, and jurisdictional challenges. And inequities resulting from investments in the built environment may include less funding in disadvantaged or rural areas in particular, and accelerated gentrification and displacement. Next slide. Regarding vehicle weight and road degradation, passenger vehicles, including battery electric and fuel cell engines, have a very minor effect on pavement damage and rehabilitation costs when compared to large multi-axle commercial vehicles. So much so that passenger vehicles entirely are excluded from consideration in Caltrans pavement damage calculations. Therefore, any incremental increase in passenger vehicle weight is not anticipated to have a significant impact on road degradation. Next slide. Regarding potential weight-based fee responses, weight-based passenger vehicle fee could most easily be structured as an annual vehicle registration fee or as a one-time fee at point of purchase. The same across all vehicles, or it could be applied differently based on different vehicle factors, such as fuel type, also profession or occupation of the driver, disability, income, or potentially other options. Some task force members supported a fee to fund safety improvements for vulnerable road users or to subsidize lighter weight vehicles, bicycles, and transit. Some task force members did not support a fee, citing the lack of a strong causal relationship between vehicle weight and negative safety outcomes for vulnerable road users, also citing affordability concerns and political feasibility of implementation. Next slide. And lastly, regarding consumer behavior response to potential weight-based fee, consumer purchase behavior could change more in response to a larger one-time fee that we saw when we ran our analysis compared to a smaller annual fee. Generally, a larger one-time fee could result in a steeper decline in the heaviest passenger vehicles purchased, and this would apply across all fuel types. It could generate more revenue. Also, it could persuade consumers to switch to lighter vehicles or hold on to their vehicles longer to avoid this fee. Also note that any exemptions from a fee could substantially lower the revenue generation predicted. And task force members discuss how a fee may or may not address the goals of the study.
Right.
Next slide. So I know that was a lot of information. That does conclude our presentation of the findings. And I'm happy to go back to any of the slides also if you want to look at some of that information in particular as you're providing your responses to these questions. But we're happy to accept your feedback at this time. Again, in response to these questions or any other thoughts you have, wanted to open up the floor for feedback.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is the interpreter speaking. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the other interpreter is trying to join the meeting. Can someone please allow her to come in as a panelist so she can join? Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Oh, something happened to my video. Thank you all for this information. At this time, do any of our members have any questions or feedback regarding the presentation?
I have a question, Peggy.
Yes, go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for the presentation. I read through it in advance, so that was kind of helpful for me. What I wonder, a couple things. I did see that the National Federation of the Blind of California was included as one of the stakeholder groups, which is really great, and I really appreciate knowing that. So I'd be curious about whatever their input was. And I don't know whether that's something you can share now or if it's something you can send us later. So that's one question. The second question is, when you do present this report to the legislature, what is it exactly that we are, or you are trying to gain? I mean, I understand that well, I guess I'm supposing that the goal is fewer fatalities ultimately. So understanding what we know about vehicle weight and now, I mean, it sounds like this report is saying that there's not a causal relationship between vehicle weight and I may have it wrong, so please forgive me if I do.
No, you
But
have it right.
there's not a causal relation between the weight of a car, although that just does not seem right to me, and the whether or not it is the factor that kills somebody. What is the sort of, are we just, is it, that is what we're saying that we don't have? So, I mean, I don't think I have a conclusive remainder or to my to my question. I'm just trying to understand that this report has been created and we've learned some things and I could probably read this again, but I don't understand. I mean, can you help me understand what we're asking
Yeah.
of the legislature?
Hi, this is the interpreter again. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the other interpreter has not been. Oh, I see she's in here now. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah, and I'm happy to respond to your question and your questions. So I think to your first question about the National Federation for the Blind in California and their feedback, if you want more information, I could go back and look at what they provided. But I would say overall, the feedback that we heard from them was in regards to, how to ensure that the built environment is more, designed in a way that it's conducive or that it allows people with those who are unable to see at different levels of impairment, and just those generally who face different challenges can better interact more safely on our roadways and with vehicles and other road users. So, that was what the kind of comes to me at the front of mind. And so that was really helpful. And you saw also as part of some of the feedback that we presented today, I mean, that was something the task force members cited was, if we can't, if the academic research can't draw a conclusion between vehicle weight and fatalities and serious injuries of vulnerable road users, are there other things that could be looked at, such as, improvements of the built environment, more funding for the built environment, and so on. So there's just a number of different considerations. I think that just their feedback along with others are all part of the findings and something that we'll take into consideration in our report to the legislature. And I guess regarding to what we hope to do with our report to the legislature, really it's to fulfill the requirements of the legislation, which is, to study the relationship between vehicle weight and impacts, if any, vulnerable road users, injuries and fatalities, impacts to road degradation based on vehicle weight and equity considerations. And there's some other things as well. So really and I'm sorry, I have my volume turned to low. If it sounds like someone might have been saying something, feel free to interrupt me again if you want. But really our report is to just respond to legislative requirements, taking the feedback that we hear today and from the other sources that I mentioned. So what exactly that will look like, we're just going to start drafting our report. We're not sure what that will look like, but it will take all these inputs that I mentioned previously into consideration, and something that we will, keep the EAC and the commission in the loop on as we start to formulate that report.
Thank you. I'm going to turn off my screen reader. I think that's the thing that's you're hearing everyone. So I'm going to turn it off. Anyway,
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, I see member Michelle next.
Yeah, I'm wondering how this report and findings to the legislature can help them have a better understanding of what you're asking them in a way that makes your report out to them, be more specific about what your needs and wanting from that report to them. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think the safety issues and the fatalities, how much they're up is of very much concern. And to like point that out and if you're from what I'm understanding is you're wanting to implement basically a tax on the roadway and the vehicles that are coming out and how to implement that in a way that is not only productive for the needs of that area, but also very aware of what the community needs are as far as the disabled, seniors, and those of low income and things like that, but still be able to get that income in that's needed to make needed change. Am I correct? Sorry.
I missed the last part of what you said. I heard needs of the communities and low income, and then I couldn't hear after that.
Sorry. Yeah, the be able to make sure that it it has an equity atmosphere so that you're not targeting like the low income people and things like that, so that they, if they have to pay, that they have a way to be able to afford that too. And so that we're not taking them out of the demographic area of not being able to have a vehicle for one more thing that takes it out of being equitable for them to be able to drive too. Maybe. I think we forget sometimes as a society, a lot of these taxes are much needed for improvements and things like this, but we forget about the low income people and people with disabilities and things like that who can't necessarily afford one more thing added to the tax and that's a tax to them and their environment to improve it, but yet it needs to be a variable that is looked at too, so that we're not putting them in a position of not being able to get where they need to go when they need to go.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. And you know, happy to say that task force members, as you saw in the presentation, also had those same points of view. So that is captured in the findings. And in regards to like, okay, well, what are we explicitly asking the legislature to do? We are intending and getting into a bit more clarity regarding, well, I should say the forthcoming draft report that we after today will start to draft. We're hoping to get more into that detail, taking what we heard from the academics, from the task force, and then using that as direction into, whatever it is. I'm not sure at this point. Tangible, direction of like tangible outcomes or recommendations in the report to the legislature. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that helps. And I think so many times we put in to the legislator and our senators what we think our communities need, and we don't address some underlining issues that may not make that necessarily work, and then there's no funding stream, and then we go without that needed change for long periods of time because we have to go back to them to complete the task of making sure that funding is available for whatever change we want. So I just want to make sure with whatever is presented to the legislator that it's clear and concise and that it meets the community's needs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, it might not, it seems at this point, you know, we're presenting information that it isn't, you know, clear recommendations or actionable, but that, you know, it's just the feedback that we've heard from the task force. And we'll base, you know, what's in our report on that and do our best to, you know, make it, make it clear and concise and actionable, if that makes sense. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Rousey. Now I see Member Howard Wong.
Thank you. This is a very important study. I'm glad that the legislator and you know our agencies are taking a hard look at traffic and pedestrian fatalities. I think we're all been very uh, disturbed that despite all our efforts on highway and road safety, Vision Zero programs, that traffic fatalities and pedestrian fatalities continue to persist or even rise in some cases. I think anecdotally, as people who watch our streets and roads, we do see you know increased and when we read in the media very horrific accidents. Sometimes they involve large passenger vehicles, sometimes not. Uh, we do read a lot about how vehicles are designed, that larger vehicles have blind spots, have a greater weight. Uh, so I think it's very important that the data be very concisely crafted. And I'm happy to see that it's academic research that is driving the report, not consultants necessarily. That I think the data can lead to a better understanding of how accidents are happening. That weight might not be the issue, and maybe the design of the vehicles that can't see, you know, more than a certain number or 10 feet or whatever in front of them. I think the data should also analyze what other countries have already done. The city of Paris, I believe, is recently either restricting or banning SUVs and large vehicles from central Paris. So I think one should incorporate all their research and data and to see why they did that and what was the outcome if it's been enacted. The also technology, I think, needs to be evaluated. So perhaps it's not the vehicle itself, but what can be adapted. You know, front-facing cameras for large vehicles, side-facing cameras, uh, adjacent car detection, crash avoidance systems. So, and of course, the design of a vehicle, how it's designed. So there are a lot of things that can be looked at. I think the data, I think, is very, very important, and it be, you know, put into a form that's very simple to understand as to what primary contributors are to road safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. I noted all those, and those are things that we have also, the academic team have looked at and are noted in the report as well. So that's just helpful to have that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wong. I see Member Torres Van Vliet.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Nice. Thank you, Chair, for the time. Apologies for joining late. I was coming from a work event. I appreciate the research from the CTC staff and the task force on this. I did attend the previous task force meeting for the vehicle weight study. I've got two questions. So that in the slide deck presentation, that was provided on the PDF, page 13. There's a line that says no causal relationship between a vehicle weight, and I believe causal relationship between vehicle weight and is it traffic crash severity? I don't have the full
We go to that slide.
oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, there's no despite evidence the
13.
causal relationship between vehicle weight and fatality and serious injury trends cannot be identified. And then the next slide says that children pedestrians are 82% more likely to be killed if struck by a SUV versus a sedan. So is this to imply that the main explanation for the significant increase of likeliness of fatality struck by SUV isn't weight, that it's the design of the vehicle and the speed and or other factors? Help me understand that, because there seems to be a yeah, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, it's so, and I honestly can't remember the exact research on this exact specific trend. We do have academic report that we could also provide to and point you to, but from what I do recall, that has to do with the form factor. And certainly speed is something else. For example, our Office of Traffic Safety task force members and others, and of course in the academic research, brought up as another significant factor. And I see Justin, you want to chime in?
Great. Thanks, Kayla. Hi, everyone. This is Justin Behrens with the California Transportation Commission, working with Kayla on this report. And I think Randy is touching on one of the really important nuances and also one of the kind of challenges in the research that's really relevant for this discussion. And basically what it looks like is, while we have these two parallel trends of growing vehicle weight parallel to the trends we're seeing in increasing fatalities and injuries, what's really difficult from a research perspective and a data perspective to figure out is how those trends are related. You can see that they're kind of moving in the same direction, right? They're both increasing, but is it solely because vehicle weight that those pedestrian and those vulnerable road user fatality injury trends are trending up, or is it other factors as well? And so to your point, Randy, speed, the mass of a vehicle, those are kind of more those are certainly factors that are important when you look at a specific crash. But when you look at it sort of at the trend level, it's really hard to say, yes, these crashes are increasing solely because of vehicle weight, or is it some other factor that's involved? And so that's, I think, the important nuance that Kayla had in her slides, which is that while you can see those parallel trends, it's really hard to figure out what exactly the specific relationship is between those two trends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Is there a study that that can explain why there is an 82% why children pedestrians are 82% more likely to be killed if struck by SUV versus a sedan?
Yeah, we do have academic research that we can provide. It is on our website as well. If you go to the very bottom of it, there's a tab that can't remember exactly what it's called, but academic research or something like that. There is a document there that has more information on that.
Okay, thanks. Two other questions. Do you look at did any of the studies look at the crash rate? One of the arguments I've heard is that that there may be more people walking and biking, and therefore there are more crashes involving people that walk or bike. But is the crash rate analyzed in any of the studies?
Yeah, I believe all of that was a factor. You'd have to get into the actual academic research to find out like specifically that relationship. I think what it probably offers is a number of different reasons for that. So, crash rate and others. It also cites, I should say, there's also again, it being difficult to isolate vehicle weight as a single factor amongst many other factors. Pedestrians, for example, I think it cites that there's a lot of fatalities and serious injuries happening outside of crosswalks, particularly at night. So I think it would explore that a little bit more in the research itself.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question relates to, there's a line that says countries similar to the US require vehicle testing for pedestrian collision outcomes. Is that one of the recommendations for the research? And if not, I'm curious why. And has that led to decreased, like more positive pedestrian collision outcomes? The countries that have tested for pedestrian collision outcomes, has that led to safer conditions, to your knowledge?
I actually have some of that information excerpted here that I'm just taking a quick look at. That's certainly something, because we have it in the findings, that we're going to take into consideration as we draft our recommendations. I can't say whether or not it's going to be in our recommendations at this point. But the information, and actually I can, that's something, if you're interested in, I could share more information with you about at another time. But the research, the policy document itself, does not actually list like the specific outcomes or the efficacy of that. But it cited it as a program in another country that we could model. And actually, just taking a look here. The research says, as of November 2024, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration New Car Assessment Program did finalize a rule change that looked at crashworthiness pedestrian protection programs in the next decade. But, the rollout of that, especially given administrative changes, it's uncertain at this point. But that is something that the federal side has started to take a look at. And adoption of the programs. But in terms of the efficacy of those programs in the research, that is not something that's cited. But I can provide that document to you if you would like to read more about it.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Member Rousey?
Yeah, I know in some of my other transportation work in the multimodal kind of thing, we look at other cities and other states and what they're doing. Have we actually gotten data from other states on a national level to get a comprehensive look at not just here in California, but what other states are doing in this line?
Yeah, great question. We actually, so we did get, and we presented it at, I believe, our October 29th task force meeting, some of the ways in which other states have either studied or implemented a vehicle weight fee. Now, what we have is just more fee structures or how it applies, like to what vehicle types, weights, etc. What was not available to our researchers was the intent of their passenger vehicle weight program, and then as a result, the outcomes. So they were not able to tell if any of those programs were based on or created for a reason as similar to why this legislation was created, which was to offset impacts to vulnerable road users. So yeah, the objective, the goals of those programs were not available and not clear to the research and to us based on what information we could find. And so therefore we can't say like, oh, here are the outcomes. Yeah, that information, if you're interested in learning more at a high level, is on our website, our 2025 meeting materials for October. The presentation materials do list some of those structures, so you can get a better idea about them. So I should also say that some of the things that the fee models that we ran, which is that consumer behavior response to simulated weight fees, did use some theoretical numbers to look at consumer behavior response, and then also did model it after how other states had done it. I would say other states their fee structures were more similar to the annual fee, the lower fee that was modeled in that presentation.
Thank you.
Member Alvarado.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for the presentation. I want to echo a couple of things that were already shared as my curiosity. So I will agree with Randy immediately. A couple of the bike advocates know that cycling is on the rise. So that would be really critical to incorporate. We don't want to skew the data. We want it to be as close to actuality as possible. And I think also predicting might even be a little bit wise to say we anticipate cycling to increase because of poverty and accessibility. So we anticipate these fatalities to unfortunately increase to impart the immediacy on responding. I think the second thing, exactly what Peggy said, Member Martinez hit the nail on the head for me. In a previous life, I worked in policy and we passed the first soda tax in the nation, and the policy worked in the sense that we were able to encourage folks to have healthier options, but we punished the consumer. And thinking critically, we want to make sure that we're punishing the folks that are actually held responsible if that's the choice of the tax, right? So really imparting that bottom line to the study to name. The study found this, but the cause of this study was to identify a tax. We could not correlate that. So like let's hold off on imparting a tax until we can name, like someone needs to kind of ethically to name that. And then there was one other thing that there was in this study, I wasn't able to review the 421 page version, but I also got the version that was a couple pages, and it said like per population in terms of rural that more accidents happened in urban. What's interesting per my localized crash data, but I'm also in the Central Valley, is 7 of the deaths, 6 of them happened in rural roads, and it was because it was the lack of infrastructure, no lights, and the lip. And so I'm wondering, is this leading us to develop a tool? Because no matter how you present the data, if my localized officials are going to be using these recommendations that are coming down the pipeline, are they going to also be able to gauge this was based on quote unquote population, meaning they looked at the totality of California, not necessarily our localized solutions? So something about naming these distinctions to so what is that? What am I pointing to is can we develop our outreach strategy now to basically like work through some of these things that community are going to be grappling with? We can basically say, and yes, for those in rural California, we built this tool because this may not necessarily pertain to the way that your localized governments are going to be looking at triaging care, because 100% of your focus point should be rural, since my data of 2025 says 6 out of the 7 deaths are in rural roads.
Thank you. And I noted all that down in terms of suggestions or things to flag with our report, but I did want to also note that Berkeley's academic research did actually classify and look at, so not statewide data, but they did look at, they classified, I don't remember exactly their methodology, but it is explained in their research documentation on the website, but they classified based on number of features, rural areas, suburban areas, and urban areas. So they did look at more localized data when providing these results. But yeah, I wrote down what you said. I just want to let you know that it wasn't based on state, but that's very helpful.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And I forgot to mention, and I loved what Howard Wong said, if we could also balance with like what's actually working right now too. That was a great suggestion. Thank you.
Member Wong.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also that if one were to look at data, it seems like there are at least three areas that one should focus on. One is the vehicle itself. The second would be the street, the design of the streetscape. And so there seems to be three parts to that data. And then one should look at what has actually worked in the world. Vision Zero has been accomplished in several cities. Hoboken, New Jersey has had zero road fatalities for several years. Helsinki, Finland has zero fatalities, and their focus has been on street design, mainly eliminating parking at crosswalks, for instance. And then there's also the driver component and the alcohol, drugs, driving while impaired. And many European cities have, through legislation, almost, lowered dramatically fatalities due to drunk driving through fines, loss of licenses, extreme legislative approaches. So there are several components to data that I think should be all looked at.
You noted.
Thank you. Member Huerta.
Member Alvarado said something that sparked my interest about consumers getting the brunt of this. And I just wanted to ask if during the task force meetings, if the conversation of OEMs taking these fees on was addressed. I mean, the cost of a new vehicle is really high. It continues to rise every year. So just wondering if that was even something that was discussed.
And sorry, it was maybe on my end, it was a little quiet. You said if OEMs,
Yeah.
the manufacturers.
Yeah, the Toyotas or the actual manufacturers, because even, I mean, when they release a new vehicle, they have their MSRP price, but once you get to the dealership, there's that markup. So I was just wondering if there have been any types of conversations of, instead of the consumer taking on these additional fee, having the OEM, since they're already have really high prices, them taking on that fee.
Well, I certainly don't want to speak for the manufacturers of the automotive industry, but I would think that they would probably pass on any fees to consumers, is my guess. But yes, it was definitely, I mean, we had a few representatives from the automotive industry, and it was expressed, I think the average vehicle price has now exceeded $50,000 in California. And, and they did cite things, I didn't look at this to be, was backed up by data, but they did talk about safety regulations, even making vehicles heavier and, all these different things. So kind of making things heavier and more expensive, and that being of concern to them in terms of, people buying their vehicles. So yeah, that was brought up as an impact on the manufacturers just to sell, or not manufacturers, but the dealers as well, to sell cars, and then people continuing to hold on to their cars longer, which right now there is a trend of, I believe, people having their cars average of 12.6 years, which I believe maybe a decade before that was around 10 years or a little less. So they felt like that was going to continue with this fee, if a fee were imposed. And it would be passed on to the consumers, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kayla, for this. Seeing no other comments from our members, I wanted to throw some things at you, so I hope you're taking notes.
Yep.
So picking back on the whole fee conversation, I know here in the Inland Empire, we've had robust conversations in different agencies, including the South Coast AQMD, regarding the vehicle weight and degradation of road and all of that and infrastructure. So I saw in the report that fees are based on the weight, and like you just mentioned, most likely put on the buyers or the consumer. On the heavy duty truck fee side of things, we have been advocating to put some of those fees to the warehouse developers or corporations that are bringing the trucks into our communities. Because when it used to take paving of a road every like 5 to 10 years, now it's taking like every 2 years to repave roads because of the heavy weight. And I know that there was no mention, and as I'm reading the law also, it sounded like it was more towards, like the regular commuter vehicles versus like the heavy duty trucks. But for us, it's a real issue here in the Inland Empire. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the last 2 months, that I know of, we have folks have reported over 10 fatalities of heavy duty trucks. And so I know that was not part of the bill, but I think it should still be mentioned. Um, and then one of the other things that I saw that was interesting, that it mentioned there was the weight of the load. So 25,000 pound load causes 244% of the damage, but those weights are illegal in California, yet they're coming from the ports, all the way from the ports to the Inland Empire and sometimes to the Central Valley. And so again, I know that that's not sort of like the focus of this bill, but I think it needs to be mentioned. And then I didn't see anything, and forgive me if it's in the report and I didn't see it. I didn't see any mention of safe routes to school. I know we have been advocating heavily to bring more like biking infrastructure, sometimes roundabouts, with the consideration of how that impacts our folks with disabilities. But where's the collaboration with Safe Routes on that?
Yeah, well, so I would say that from what was also presented today, there were kind of a number of things that task force members said that should be looked at, even though the study was to look at passenger vehicle weight and fatality, serious injuries of vulnerable road users. They did mention things like educational campaigns, infrastructure, and they did point out, the barriers to those things, the potential equity concerns related to, to making improvements, such as possibility of gentrification and displacement when you invest in areas to improve infrastructure, kind of getting at, complete streets and things to improve safe routes for students. But then they did talk about non-infrastructure, meaning like programs, safety awareness, and I think safe routes to school does fall within that. So those are all, I mean, I'm not sure if that's, if I'm answering your question in the exact way that you're looking for, but I believe their recommendations were kind of encapsulating of things that I think would also include safe routes to school, having more emphasis on kind of the multiple approaches to emphasize safe routes to school work, the non-infrastructure side, the infrastructure side, funding side, and so on. So I think that was mentioned.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I didn't see it on the report, but again, like
It's a lot.
member Alvarado said, it's 400 plus pages. So I'm still reading through it, but I wanted to make sure that that was a component of the conversation and like more of an intent to invest in that program so we can do more outreach and educational opportunities for vulnerable road users, right? Because there's a lot of education we need to do for sure. The other thing I wanted to bring up, we have been assessing also the whole weight vehicle situation in the Inland Empire. And one of the things that we've come to a realization is that a lot of the folks that buy trucks or pickup trucks or SUVs, they're actually going out of state to purchasing them and then they bring them into California. And so you see a lot of trucks with like Texas, plates or Arizona plates because they don't have to pay those fees in those states. And so how are we, or like, was that part of the conversation also? Because we're seeing an increase of folks going out of the state to avoid those fees.
Mhm. Yeah, that was certainly something, and it is captured in our task force findings as something that that it was brought up. It wasn't a major focus of the fee research, but it is something we've heard time and again. So yeah, it could be something for further consideration potentially in the report.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. And then another thing that struck me in the report was the economic cost of U.S. crash fatalities in the 340 billion, but in 29 billion in California alone. So it got me thinking like, wow, if we could just do all these preventative measures and safety measures and road infrastructure, like we could best use those $29 billion better in upgrading infrastructure than having to spend it on like funerals and like health situations. So I hope that we really put an emphasis on safety for our community so we can better invest those dollars in upgrading infrastructure. And that doesn't mean road expansions, because one of the things that we have seen here in the Inland Empire to accommodate more truck traffic is that the more we have widened our roads, the more fatalities we've seen in the roads because we're making it more accessible for commuters to speed up or to not be safe in the road, right? So, yeah, anyway, there's a lot of conversations we need to happen. So I hope that all of those things are being captured in the report.
Yeah, even from those who agreed or disagreed with levying a passenger vehicle weight fee, both suggested if one were to be levied, it would be focused on safety for vulnerable road users specifically. So
Okay.
heard, understood, and reinforced by your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So at this time, do we have any public comment, Justin?
Pardon me? No, I'm not seeing any request to comment at this time.
All right, awesome. So hearing no other conversation, we can go back to approving our minutes from the November meeting. I'll entertain a motion if y'all ready.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Member Huerta. Second, anybody?
Second, Howard.
Second.
Thank you. Justin, would you like to do roll call?
Great, thank you, Chair. Will do. Gary Akimi Hernandez. Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Approve.
David Acevedo. Gloria Huerta. Gloria Huerta. I see you're muted, but I'm not getting any audio at the moment. I'll come back. Peggy Martinez. I don't see Peggy on anymore. Andres Ramirez. Michelle Rousey. Michelle Rousey,
99069.
I'm frozen.
Michelle Rousey,
I'm sorry. I don't know what to do to get out of it.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, guys. My system's acting up. Yes, I approve.
thank you.
Can you
Randy
mute
Torres
me?
Van.
Thank you.
Yes, I approve. Yes, I approve.
Great, thank you, Randy. Howard Wong,
Aye.
Chair Ana Gonzalez.
Aye.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to Gloria Huerta. Gloria, I see you're muted, but I'm not getting any audio from you.
I guess you can give us a thumbs up if you're good.
Okay, or you can use the virtual raise hand feature to indicate aye.
I think she might have popped off to rejoin.
Okay. We will need one more vote.
Member Puolani's also here now.
Is she part of this subcommittee?
Yes, yes, I am. And I approve the minutes as well.
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. Aye.
Wonderful. The motion is approved.
All right. Yay, we did it. All right, so that concludes our meeting for today. The Transportation Planning Subcommittee will reconvene in January to continue advisory opportunities on the Caltrans Transit Policy Implementation Plan and California Freight and Mobility Plan. So I will see you all, and I hope you all enjoy this holiday season, and Happy New Year if I don't see you before then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.